The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for attending our podcast today. Really excited to bring in some of the experts, a couple of people from our Search Lab team, and then we have Arthur from Google joining us today. I'm going to spend the next 45 minutes or so going through the importance of localized strategy when it comes to digital strategy across the board. A couple of housekeeping items. This will be about 30 to 45 minute webinar, and then we'll leave some time at the end for questions and answers. So if you do throughout this entire webinar have any questions, just drop them in the chat box, you'll see, and we will answer as many as we can at the very end. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and turn over to Nicola, Harriet, and Arthur.
Well, thank you, Lacey, very much. And hello, everybody. So for any of you who aren't familiar with Search Laboratory and who we are as an agency, we're an integrated global digital marketing agency. We have around 150 people split between two offices, one here in the UK, where me and Harriet are joining you from, and of course one in the US. So I guess in practical terms, what that means is that we drive profitable growth for our clients through digital marketing and data science as well. So I'm not going to spend too long on this one, actually. It's just a visual representation of the services that we offer at Search Labs, but we work around sort of four key pillars, and that is performance marketing, data science, growth strategy, and a lot of what we're talking about today is, of course, global reach. I guess it's worth just mentioning we do have a sort of real wealth of knowledge of most industries. We have the pleasure of working with people across multiple industries. Particularly over the past couple of years, we've really helped B2B brands excel through times of uncertainty, but we have some real expertise, particularly within retail as well. So lots of case studies and a lot of sort of wealth of knowledge that has come from managing those sorts of accounts. And Lacey kind of quickly introduced us at the beginning, but just to go into a little bit more detail, I'm Nicola Winters. I head up the international department here at Search Labs, so it's quite a unique role. But essentially it means that I manage a team of digital marketers, native speakers from around the globe, and we help clients in around 35 different languages across about 18 countries. And our job is, of course, to understand consumer behaviour and sort of inject that linguistic and cultural knowledge into all of the campaigns that we do for our clients. But we also want to look for growth opportunities and really expand your international reach. So I'm joined by Harriet, who's part of the international department as well. So she heads up our translation offering, which you would think is just about words on the page, but believe me, localization runs through absolutely everything that we do. And then, as mentioned, we're lucky enough to be joined by Arthur, who's an international growth consultant from Google. So it'd be quite exciting for him to explain his role at Google and basically how he helps clients accelerate their growth. So a little bit of an agenda, but more importantly, what I'm hoping that you'll all be able to action or at least look into these things as soon as this webinar's finished, is that the first thing is how to identify new markets with the biggest revenue potential. You can go down a bit of a rabbit hole with that research, but more importantly, how to set realistic KPIs and performance goals for those new markets and really how to allocate your budget in a sensible way. A bit around localization, so how to really overcome those operational barriers for your users and connect with those users at every single stage of their sort of online journey. And then the last part is actually the bit that we spend, I would say, as an agency the most in. We work with a lot of brands who are already selling in lots of different international territories, are quite well established, but performance, for whatever reason, has remained a bit stagnant. And so it's all about, really accelerating that growth and dominating those markets. So yeah, I guess just to throw it back out to you guys, I'd love to know kind of where you're at in this stage. So Parker, if you're okay to just start a bit of a poll, it would be really good to know, which part of the journey you're at. So is it that you are currently in a research sort of phase where you're looking to expand your business and selling new territories. It might be that you're quite new to a market, and you know it's been a bit of a slow start and you're really looking for a growth strategy, or well established, you know, already international and really looking to dominate that. So yeah, it'd just be really interesting to find out where people are at with that. So I'll just give it a couple of seconds. Nothing too awkward, promise. Okay, and then if we can, yeah, just stop that poll and I'll have a quick look at it. Okay, this is interesting. So it seems like the majority of the attendees are present in international markets and looking for those growth strategies. So this is really important, actually. We've got a full section on sort of quick wins for how to get the more performance, or at least more revenue from your international markets. But then we also have a bit more maturity framework and sort of data projects to help you dominate. So yes, we will cover all of those 3 sections. I guess without any further ado, I'm going to pass over to Arthur at Google.
Hello, folks. Thanks, Nicola. Arthur here from Google. I'm a part of the international growth team, as Nicola pointed out, but focusing specifically on agencies. So it's very interesting because we partner with agencies to help you folks grow internationally in a profitable way. And Search Laboratory is part of our exclusive program who actually gets our partnership in a very close proximity for us to be able to actually partner and give them the resources as well to be able to leverage that success. So it's very exciting. But let me take a step back and take you through what is it that the international growth team does at Google. The international growth team, it kind of is a little bit far away from the digital marketing element of Google per se, which is probably what you're mostly familiarized with. And Nicola is later gonna give us an overview of that specifically. But the international growth team partners with a very robust network of third-party partners to be able to understand insights and opportunities to drive success in market expansion. So we use search volume of data to try and identify consumer behavior and interest, to make a decision and understand those insights and preferences in those new markets to make sure that we're able to understand how to localize a business and set them up for success. But why is it that international growth is so top of mind for Google right now, and why is it that there's an entire area dedicated to that, including this program, international growth for agencies specifically? Since 2020, despite the macroeconomic uncertainty, we saw that the global export trade has actually grown 350 to reach 22.5 trillion in 2022. Indicating the phenomenal scale of the opportunity that we have ahead of us. The businesses that were able to capitalize on this growth had a total shareholder returns of 1.9 percentage points higher than their peers. So despite everything that was going on in the last couple of years, we actually saw an increase in export and a growth in that area. These insights actually come from a lot of research in one of our partnerships that we have with Euromonitor and The Economist, which was focused specifically on growth amidst uncertainty. And another very interesting insight, and this is really one that I want you all to remember after today, was that by adding only one extra market to their export basket, companies were actually able to isolate themselves from the effects of uncertainty. So this is really important because all of this came as a study that we did with The Economist, and this understanding actually leveraged a couple of more questions of how is that even possible, and why is this a trend right now, and why is this happening? There are a couple of data points that I want to take you through to exemplify that exact point. So bear with me, it's a little bit numbers heavy, but I promise it's going to make sense. So we are in a once in a lifetime digitization, and in the last few years, this has made the world so much smaller and the global marketplace a lot more accessible than ever. which created a lot of opportunities for businesses of all sizes. As of last year, 60% of the world was online. Oh, sorry. That's nearly 5 billion people browsing the internet, searching for information, interacting with brands, and making online purchases. The world shrunk, and 5 billion people were actually just there, having everything in their reach. Oh, sorry. Go. And this was a key reason why cross-border trade actually grew twice as fast as domestic e-commerce over the past 5 years, demonstrating that the consumers are increasingly open to purchasing international brands, offering another significant opportunity for brands. So the world not only shrunk, but people were actually willing to take a look of what was, for the first time, closer to them. And then, as the purchase options actually increase and the economic uncertainty remains, consumers are more open than ever of trying new brands. So not only taking a new sneak peek, but actually trying it out, with 1 in 4 consumers globally willing to switch between brands. This is an amazing opportunity to capture more demand. And echoing Nicola's points earlier, whenever performance might be stalling, look at this literally sea of opportunities that we have out there to make it grow and use what's happening right now to our favor. And on that, that's a lot of stats. I wanted just to take a step back and pause for a bit, because this is the moment that we try to understand how to actually do it. So we understand why it's top of mind, why we talk about it at Google, why it's important in today's market, why it's important now more than ever amidst uncertainty, but how do we actually capture that opportunity and how do we locate it? So Ayrton Senna, and I'm a little bit biased on this because I'm Brazilian myself, but one of the biggest Formula One racers of all times, used to say that you cannot overtake 15 cars in sunny weather, but you can when it's raining. I'm going to take a little pause here to let it sink in, because I know it's a confusing sentence. You cannot overtake 15 cars in sunny weather, but you can when it's raining. That means that it's kind of easy to prepare for an optimal condition, isn't it? Everybody expects it. Everybody knows exactly what to do when it's not raining and it's actually sunny, meaning that competition is a lot harder. But when it's raining and you actually prepare for the rain, those who are able to do it well will take over the other ones like this. So there is a luxury in learning how to thrive in uncertainty. And this is what we're looking at right now. Those who are able to deal with the uncertainty scenario that we're living through right now are going to be able to equip themselves with the tools to overcome the others who didn't. So now let's move on to the how. I think the first most important thing that we need to have top of mind is there actually an opportunity? Everything else I just mentioned is true. It is very important right now. We need to focus on it. It's a huge thing, and we need to be able to equip ourselves to deal with that uncertainty. But we need to be honest and ask ourselves a couple of questions of, does it actually make sense for us right now to go through it, or do we need to do a couple of things beforehand? And these are a couple of ways that we can think about global expansion to help you identify those opportunities. Oh, apologies. A little bit of it. Sorry. So at Google, we look at international expansion in 2 big buckets, right? One of them being expansion itself, and the other one being optimization. And echoing a little bit of Nicola mentioned before, optimization stands for improving your presence in a market that you're currently exporting into. Say you're already overseas, you're already making commerce in international waters, but how can we make sure that we have what it takes to dominate that market and increase our presence there and be competitive? The other one, expansion, on the other hand, is all about expanding to a new market. Either if you're already in one market and you want to expand to a new one, or if you've been domestic all this time and now it's time to take that extra step for international expansion, that's expansion for you. And that's where we are going to start right now. What is it that we need to have top of mind to understand how to identify an opportunity for expansion? There are 4 big questions that I really like asking for making the decision if that's the right one for you or not. The first one is market attractiveness, right? So before even thinking about, before making the decision of exporting, you got to understand, where is it that I want to export into? Where is it that I can find the interest for what I have to offer? At Google, we really like to use overall search volume to have a little bit of that understanding of what are people looking for, right? And that's the magic of the search tool in itself. What are people literally looking for? So that's the first data point that you got to ask yourself. Are people looking for what you have to offer? And then the second one is market risks. Everywhere, every single country has their own regulations, policies, and several elements that we need to take into consideration before even thinking about doing business there. What are those? Those are things you're going to need to deal with. They're there. They're reality. So what is it that you can do to adapt your business and work around those regulations and policies? Third one is market entry barriers. Not only regulations and policies, but what is it that that new market actually likes? And I'm not talking about search volume or if the market is attractive or not, but what is it that they're used to when we're talking about delivery times? What is it that they're used to in terms of payment methods? What is it that makes their purchase process comfortable and that they're going to want to see whenever they see a new business showing up? And then product market fit. Does your product in your culture represent something to that new culture? Are they good in English proficiency, or do you need to adapt not only the whole purchase process, but what you got to offer as well and how you talk about it? 4 big questions to understand. Are you ready for that global expansion? Where should you go? What you should pay attention to, and how you need to adapt yourself. Then moving on to optimization, global branding and market maturity. So at Google, when we're talking about optimization, and just as a refresher, optimization is about improving your presence in a market that you're currently already exporting into. There are 2 big variables that we like to cross to identify what types of actions you can take and how ready your company is in that stage of optimization, so you can take the right step towards increasing your presence there. The first one then, you're going to see on the left-hand side there, brand and category popularity. And then in the lower part, you're going to see brand competitiveness. So we're talking about how popular the brand is and what is the competition like for that specific brand, right? So more to the right, more to the left, it's lower, more to the right is higher. Now, the first one there, that first quadrant, is creation. So if we're dealing with a low competition and low popularity for your branding category, then it's the moment of creating that demand and understanding how you can actually position yourself so you can start the category and make it more popular. So it's all about building brand awareness at scale. And then moving on to then competing, which is when you have a very good brand popularity in a very low competition market. Then it's a matter of differentiating yourselves from those competitors and making sure that you're leading the charts there. And then when the brand competition is actually really high, but your category is not popular at all, it's about creating the awareness of your category specifically and curating that audience in your favor. Finally, when it's high competition, but your brand and category is really, really popular, it's all about improving performance when it comes to actually driving action on your website. So that's performance, performance, performance. High value user, awareness, converting, return on ad spend, and so on and so forth. Now that we talked about the theory of the different types of international expansion, I wanted to just take a step back from all that and show you what it actually looks like in practice. Wonderblue is a UK-based company, and they're actually specialized, and this is a very, very nice because I didn't know such business existed. They're actually specialized in customizable children's books, which is pretty cool. They were hitting a plateau, and they were doing great in the UK, but they wanted to understand what was the next step for them. So they partnered with Google's international growth team to get an understanding of that data and those insights. Where is it that we can go? Where is it that there might be a gap for what we actually have to offer? And they identified that Germany was actually a great market for children's books, but they didn't have any personalized ones. And better yet, they understood that the Germans actually like a lot better when they see the classic German stories, which they also didn't have. Wonderfully didn't have in that point in time. So they were able to turn those insights in their favor. They published books with German stories that could be customizable, and then bam, their presence in Germany was amazing because there was a gap. They adapted to their culture by identifying those insights and what they needed to do, and they were able to launch successfully. So not only that in terms of adapting the product, but they also got insights of the German audience preferences when it comes to payment methods, delivery times, product page details, and so on and so forth, just so that they could provide to that new audience the same comfortable experience that they had domestically, but adapted to what they saw as comfort, right? In the end, we saw 102% revenue growth, 50% sales volume growth, and almost twice as much conversion rate. So this was a very nice story to keep top of mind that kind of wraps everything together that I just mentioned there. Now, how can we actually win that opportunity, just like Wonderfully? And this poor fellow there in the GIF, it's one thing that we really want to avoid. How can we not fall into those pitfalls? And what are those pitfalls in the first place? What do we need to keep in mind to make sure that we're not only going to identify the opportunity and what we want to do, but that we're actually going to be able to win them successfully? Very simple concept, sometimes hard to achieve if we want to do it right, but very, very simple concept. And this is the one thing that I want you all to leave today with in top of mind. Make international growth about audience. Everything I just mentioned so far, if you were to have an overarching concept and an underlying theory that goes through everything, everything is about people, and everything is about the culture that you're trying to venture yourself into, because the culture is going to change how you interact with the reality around you, including businesses. So that new culture is going to tell you exactly what you need to do to be able to have them experience your business the way you want it to be experienced. But it's all about understanding what they need first. So there are a couple of stats in the next slide that actually make this a little bit more tangible. 53% of internet users value quality in purchase decisions. There was an uplift of 3% in price-related queries across 23 categories in 2022 and 2021. And finally, 38% of EMEA consumers actually prioritize trust in their shopper journey. What does this mean? And this is where I'm going to leave you by wrapping up with this little story. I recently needed to buy a couch because I moved into a new house and the house was fully unfurnished. And if you ever moved into a new house that was completely empty, you're going to realize that not having a couch is kind of uncomfortable if you only have a mattress. You kind of need to do everything in your mattress. It's your living room, it's where you sleep, it's where you have food, and so on and so forth. So I really wanted a sofa as soon as possible. But being from Brazil, and I currently live in Ireland, I had no idea what an average price for a couch was. So I needed to really understand, like, what is it that I'm dealing with right now? Boom, I fell into that stat. Increase of price-related queries across 23 categories. And then moving on to internet users value quality in purchase decisions. How is it that you're going to buy a couch purely online without ever having tried it on? For me, a couch needs to be kind of a haven when I get back home. What is it that I can get as a certainty that that product is going to be exactly what I want? This product, this company that I was looking for, had videos, reviews, 360 turnaround. I could place it in my living room to see what it was going to look like. Everything to give me more comfort. And plus, which was different from the other Irish companies that I was comparing it to, the delivery time was 2 weeks. And I really needed it as soon as possible versus the other ones, which was 3 to 4 weeks. So this brand that I kind of ended up choosing was Spanish versus all the Irish ones that were just around the corner. And then 38% of EMEA consumers prioritize trust in their shopper journey. I wanted to have the exact same payment method that I was used to after I moved to Ireland. Otherwise, it's just a little weird. Bank transfer, not really my thing, what I'm used to. I wanted it to be exactly the same. And then boom, they checked that box as well, because it kind of gave me comfort and security to do that purchase. All of this to say that these aren't just stats, right? These are actual people making choices based on their preferences just to feel a little bit safer with what they're going to get in the end. So this is where I'm going to leave you. I'm going to hand it over back to Nicola to take you through the rest of the presentation. But I just wanted to wrap it up by saying that the reason Search Laboratory is actually part of the International Growth Program is because they not only are extremely knowledgeable and engaging, but they created their own process based on how good they are. So this is in itself huge leverage for success. And I'm going to let Nicola actually take you through how they did it and how they're going to help you do it as well. Over to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Arthur. Some really good things that we went through there. And yeah, like Arthur was saying, international is it's at the heart of everything that we've ever done, really, since we opened our doors back in 2005. So obviously this partnership with Google, it's enabled us as an agency to develop what we call our international growth framework. So essentially what that means is we're becoming almost like a one-stop shop for businesses who are wanting to accelerate their online expansion. So we mentioned in the poll, we can sort of satisfy any sort of business needs at these sort of stages. So I am just going to spend just 5 or 10 minutes talking about some quick wins or some tips or tricks about what we do as an agency in these three areas. Some of which you can go and sort of trial out yourselves, but it just kind of gives you an idea, really, of the sort of things that are at your disposal. So I'm going to start by talking about finding and testing new markets. It seems like, you know, there's like a third of the attendees today who are finding themselves within this section. And for us, what we hear a lot is like, what sort of metrics should I be focusing on when picking the next, you know, sort of country to start my export? What sort of research should I be looking at? How can I test this? And I guess my first tip here is to use your own data, because there is so many third-party tools out there that can look at things like the search volume and the demand and the competition, but really understanding who's on your site to begin with, where are they coming from, which different countries, that kind of is an indication that whatever it is that they were looking for, they weren't satisfied with finding it locally, and they've ended up sort of on your website. So that's always a good place to start. Something what we do at Search Laboratory is, of course, we look at all those metrics that Arthur had mentioned in the first section, but we also pull on access to the Google Market Explorer tool. So this is a tool that only people within the program have access to, but it has allowed us to size up the opportunity on an international scale in a more efficient way. So essentially, the Market Explorer tool, it's a category search demand tool, and so it's an analysis tool that looks at Google data plus third-party data, and it basically looks at industry demand, the growth of that demand over time, the level of competition as well, and any auction insights, so that you can sort of have a look at impressions over the past year, category clicks and things like that. So we use this tool to look at opportunities, whether that be worldwide, whether we're looking at a specific region, so LATAM, APAC, Europe, or to just look at, you know, specific markets. But essentially what we're doing is we're trying to size up the opportunity and say, where are we getting the most demand from on a global scale, but also matching that up with the competition, the cost for advertising in those markets as well. But the key thing is to really think about what's available to you at that time. So thinking about things like your resources, the time available, and the budget, because that will determine whether you can enter a market where you'd need more of a localized approach, so through translation, or whether it's entering a market with more of an English sort of proficiency, which can be a bit cheaper, and at least test the pickup as we go. And then when it comes to sort of setting performance goals and allocating budgets and things like that, this is where people can become a bit unstuck. The tool that I mentioned before is looking at index numbers on a scale of 1 to 1,000. And what we do at Search Laboratory is we turn those index numbers into absolutes by taking quite a few data points from your domestic markets. And essentially what we end up with is an expansion roadmap. So it acts as a forecast. The really clever bit is you're able to go into this forecast calculator, and just for an example, let's say that we want to look at the country France, which is new to us. We're going to enter this market. There's not a lot of brand awareness. No one really knows who we are, but there is a lot of demand. This is where we can start manually adjusting certain like weighting, so we can weigh something up or down based on our known data. So all this example really is showing here is we don't expect that we're going to match the same click-through rate or the conversion rate of our domestic market. So we're going to weigh that down slightly. And it gives you then really clear CPA and ROAS targets, depending on whether you're B2B or retail. So that kind of really helps businesses make better informed decisions on KPIs and setting budgets. And I just wanted to finish really by saying, even when we've identified, you know, a market that is good for our products or services to start selling in that area, we still want to use the data to hyper-localize activity at country level. So as Arthur was sort of alluding to there with the brand and the category demand, this is where we just kind of want to make sure that we are allocating the right sort of spend across a particular region and optimizing that spend as we go. So I wanted to finish this particular section with just an example of that in practice, because there's a lot of metrics, a lot of data, a lot of reports. But we've been working with Burton Snowboards for many years now. And when they first approached us, they were already live in about 4 different European markets. Performance was terrible, and mainly because they didn't have the sort of localized support to help with like language and cultural preferences. And so our team started optimizing existing campaigns. And we've seen some really good results. So, you know, half of the sales that they saw in the next year came from the newly ads that we'd created, or the localized keyword strategy as well that we'd implemented. But more importantly, we've identified so many new markets that now we are running across about 15 different markets globally. So a really good success story of how we've used that data, tested the markets, and sort of reinvested that return to really benefit an international client. So I guess just to finish off on that, you know, once you have identified an area that is, you know, going to be really good for you to export in, you're probably at a stage now where you're ready to start advertising and you want to start bringing traffic to your website and, you know, start gaining some revenue and conversions. And this is where we think it's really important to connect with consumers at every single stage of their user journey. So I will pass over to Harriet now, who is going to talk about how you can do that.
Thanks, Nicola. So we're now in the section that I think the majority of you find yourselves in at the moment. So I'll just kind of, as Nick says, talk through a bit of a scene setting and then some quick wins that hopefully you can kind of take away and implement yourselves. So just moving through into this one. Moving on. Yeah, excellent. So very often, perhaps after localizing their products or their user interface, if they're a software provider, something like that, we tend to find that businesses treat launching a localized website as their first step as far as entering a new market goes, and they look at expanding internationally and growing in their new markets. They often see it as the key to connecting with the customers, and that is for good reason, because we know that 72% of consumers spend most of their time on websites in their own language, and even in markets where there's high in English proficiency, we still see better engagement on local language websites as well, and there's definitely a preference for that. But that is only half the picture. 82% of shoppers are more likely to buy if promotional material is in their own language, so it's worth thinking about your ads and those touch points before they actually reach your website. And 56% of consumers say the ability to access information in their own language is actually more important than price. So we do really need to widen our thinking and consider the touch points throughout the customer journey. For creative advertising, for instance, we'd not only need to think about the language we use and ensure that the communications that are kind of connecting and engaging with your customer base feel like they're created specifically for them, but also look at things like the people and the locations that are featured in them. Do they feel like that they're of the market as well? And consider the cultural nuances, the type of things that Arthur covered earlier on, to really make sure that they do feel like they're for that market. Typically, consumers who see ads as culturally relevant to them see about 1.5 times, or sorry, they're 1.5 times more likely to learn additional information about the brand. They're around 3 times more likely to buy from the brand for the first time. Similarly, they're more likely to recommend that brand to others. And critically, for kind of longer term pipeline and building that brand loyalty, they're actually 50% more likely to repurchase as well. So it is really critical to not only think about your website and optimize that, but look at your digital advertising campaigns and consider your kind of brand voice across the board. So returning to the website now, it's the keyword research in the local language is not only important for that kind of research and planning stage that we've also covered, but it's really important when you're thinking about actually attracting your customer base to your website. And it's important to consider how those users are searching and then use the right terminology on your site to bring those users through. So the example that you can see here was for a car manufacturer, and they have a line of electric vehicles, EVs. And here they were operating in the French market, but they were finding that they were underperforming, and we identified that they'd missed an opportunity from failing to consider the different search terms and the search intent in the French market. So what they'd used was actually a translation of the English term electric vehicle that we would use, but in the French market they actually use a similar term, meaning electric car, which has much higher search volume and would give them a lot more reach for that reason. Similarly here, this was for a shoe retailer. We were looking at their kind of casual shoe and trainer ranges. They were operating in Germany, but what they'd used here was a mix of terms, meaning say casual shoe, sports shoe and trainers, but what they'd missed out here by not again kind of accounting for the cultural nuances was actually that the vast majority of German customers actually search the term sneaker, and so you can see here from the Google Trends that there's significantly higher search volume around that, so they really missed an opportunity by not factoring that in and thinking about and learning about how their customer base searches from the off. The next thing in terms of a quick win, looking more on the technical side here, is the hreflang implementation on your website. So that's essentially code that goes in the header of your page that tells search engines which version of your site, so kind of which language or country version to serve to users depending on what language they're searching in and where they're searching from. And so that helps from a kind of visibility point of view to make sure that your site's visible in the SERPs for the customers that you're trying to reach. But there's also a benefit there from, I guess, a user experience point of view, that if you have a potential customer that's new to your brand, they've searched and found you in those SERPs, but they're not being served with the right language version, it might put them off and you might kind of break that trust early on. So there's a missed opportunity in that respect. The example example I've included here is actually a US-UK comparison, just to highlight the importance of doing this, even if you are only operating at the moment in English-speaking markets, where you've got, say, a UK and a US version of your website. It's still important working across those markets to implement in that case as well. And finally here, I've got, it kind of again takes us back to those customer preferences, and really understanding that. And what I'll kind of show you here is what we do at Search Laboratory around those operational barriers in particular that we've talked about. And so we would do a UX review, say, of our clients' websites, and navigate through the site as a customer would, going from this would be, I suppose, for a retail site, go from the home page to the product page, then the basket and checkout. Really map out that journey and identify kind of where there are stumbling blocks, pain points along there that are maybe causing some friction or kind of breaking trust. So here we had some examples of where there were either mistranslations or certain category names weren't translated on there, and then also things around the logistics, say with shipping and delivery options, the kind of a lack of information around those that we know are really critical actually for the German market. If they're not kind of very clear from the off, there could be a breakdown there. And then also moving on, the other two things that we could look at as well are customer service and payments. So that the customer service could be around things either kind of, I suppose, before and after sales, as things like self-service content, whether it's FAQs or a help center, more so on the B2B side, but also contact options. So we know that typically in Europe, we would see a lot of email and contact forms as the kind of go-to contact methods for customers who are wanting to get in touch with brands and companies to ask questions or whatever it may be. Also in the UK, we've seen a real emergence in recent years of live chat, and that's kind of very much becoming the first port of call for many. But in the US, we can see kind of a greater preference perhaps towards picking up the telephone. So really making sure that you are giving your customers the contact options that they want to make sure that they can really feel confident in making that purchase with you. Around payments as well, we know that around 50% of customers won't return to a site if their payment doesn't go through on their kind of first experience on a site. So it's really critical looking at your kind of payment providers, that they will support the markets that you're operating in, but even things around the payment options as well are really important. So we would kind of be very used to seeing, say, credit or debit card, more now the kind of buy now, pay later options, but the customers in different markets will have different expectations and be used to seeing different payment methods. Say, for instance, in Germany, bank transfer is probably the leading payment option there, but there's also kind of other very kind of market specific ones. In the Netherlands, for instance, a payment option called Ideal is kind of by far the market leader, and we've known of cases where companies have really invested heavily in kind of a wonderfully localized website. They've kind of looked at all other kind of UX aspects on that site. Their advertising you know, is performing well, but they're falling down somewhere in that user journey, and it's falling over at the payment stage. And we've seen examples of where Ideal has been added to the site as a payment option, and there's been potentially up to 80% uplift in conversion from that. So it's really critical for that market. Elsewhere in APAC, it's quite normal to see maybe 15% to 20 different payment options on the site that we wouldn't be used to seeing in the US and the UK, but that would be quite normal there and kind of to some extent expected. And then also in the LATAM region, it's fairly commonplace for there to be an offline payment option as well, where customers would be sent, say, a QR code and take that to a local shop, a kiosk, and be able to pay offline, and so they don't have to then put their own kind of personal data into a website, which helps from a trust point of view. And it's really worth kind of implementing these things on your site and then also kind of testing their effectiveness and seeing what impact that they have on conversion. Okay. Oh, I've accidentally ticked over there, but I was just going to say, yes, to summarize this, when we do these kind of UX reviews and kind of see these kind of best practices implemented on a site, we typically see more than a 5% uplift in export revenue. So these small things can really have a great return. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Harriet. I think that was an insight into, some quick wins to implement, but also lots to think about. The final bit, and I won't take too long, I'm very aware of the time, about market dominance. I just wanted to kind of start off by saying this is actually, as an agency, where we spend most of our time working with a lot of businesses who they've entered a lot of markets, and initially they've seen some real growth and some real traction, but then over time things like do plateau, and so what we sort of come up against is this problem of how can I increase the revenue that my international sites are driving, especially in times of uncertainty. And one of the things that we're trying to do more and more with more digitally mature sort of brands is make better use of first-party data, and really using that to make the smarter decisions about sort of the next move that we're going to do. So yeah, Google and BCG put together themselves a digital maturity framework, and I guess the reason why I'm sort of fixated on this, and it's really valuable. In a recent study by Boston Consulting Group and Google, they actually found that digitally mature brands experienced an 18% increase in revenue at a 29% reduction in spend compared to developing counterparts. So it is something that we are harnessing a lot for our clients. And I guess just to kind of give you a quick overview of what's important to us within this before, diving into sort of analytics and data projects and stuff, it's worth remembering just the foundations that any decent integrated strategy is built upon. So the first and foremost is the business objectives. It kind of goes without saying, but we need to fully consider them and fully align them as well to all of our KPIs across digital. And we also want to gain a really deep understanding of not just your current, but your target and growth audiences as well. And finally, we need to consider the wide variety of pathways that those customers will be taking, because of course, these journeys are getting more and more complex. And so we kind of want to understand what those pathways are to becoming or not becoming a future customer of yours. We hope they will be a future customer. But yes, we wrap then all of those pillars, sort of, we wrap the data and the insight gathering, and we work through these digital frameworks. Now, I'm not going to go through absolutely everything on this slide, but I feel like it's important to just kind of mention that this is very much a marathon and not a sprint. It is something where when we begin, it's about analysing customer behaviour, but also product attributes as well, to really determine how that impacts lifetime value of a client and profit overall. It's also about injecting all of those insights and tracking integrated reporting as well. I think one of the main reasons why a lot of businesses feel like performance plateaus is because when you're only focusing on single channel optimization, there's going to be a ceiling. And so that's where we're sort of adapting when we're at the sort of jog and sprint sort of sections. Here's where we want to be enhancing and utilizing AI wherever possible. And yeah, the more that we're sort of the more that we understand about our customers and the value of them, the better that AI can work for us. So I guess just to summarize this, we actually have a full webinar of part of our digital super chats, a whole section on future-proofing your digital strategy. So you can find out a lot more information about this, but just to give you a quick sort of overview, the first thing that any sort of business should do is look at their digital landscape. We're very aware that it's becoming increasingly complex. And like I say, after seeing that initial growth, businesses typically hit a bit of a performance ceiling. Like I say, when they're only focusing on channel optimization alone, that tends to be what happens. So the key to unlock growth is this idea of digital maturity and really harnessing new customer data and understanding the next smartest move. And sort of understanding where you are benchmarked in that maturity framework as well. It's worth mentioning that reaching the top of that framework is not the end of the story. It's actually just the beginning. And it's something that I wanted to kind of finish on was this mindset of experimentation and remaining agile at all times. So never standing still, test, and test again. If something didn't work, why? How do we refine it? If something is working, why is it working? How can we do more of this? And some of the most successful companies in the world are primarily grown off this very mindset. Google itself does this every single day. Booking.com is sort of another platform that uses a lot of experimentation in their strategies. And just to finish with something, 3 and 4 companies have increased their digital revenue significantly due to experimentation as well. So I think that mindset of never remaining still and using your first party data to make better and more informed decisions about your future customers is definitely the way to go. And I just wanted to kind of leave you all with putting all that into sort of perspective. This is a B2B client of ours, Appy, and we've been working with these for many years. But some of the key things that we as an agency are really proud of is we've managed to really optimize the accounts in international territories, so much so that we have massively reduced CPA through a lot of those countries, with with great results across the board. Very aware of time. Thank you so much for staying on, because I know that we've gone over a little bit. Just to summarize, if you are new to market and are looking to find and test and things like that, advice definitely prioritized by demand, competition, cost of advertising, but also just your known your known problems or things that are available to you, resources, budget, time. When you're looking to really grow in a new market, I believe that, just to resonate with what Arthur was saying, it's all about audience first strategies, connecting with global consumers at every stage and optimizing their journey is definitely how you're going to get those low-hanging fruits and some quick wins from that market entry. And then for more established brands, market domination, really make use of first-party data, test, review, and refine. We also have another webinar that we've done on that experimentation together with Optimizely. So I definitely suggest that anybody within that phase certainly give that a watch as well, because there's some good stuff in there. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicola, Harriet, Arthur. Lots and lots of information there. Understand that there are so many great things to take away. So we will be following up with them, a recording of this webinar as well, and also you know where to find us. I am going to. There were just a couple of questions. Again, we'll focus 3 minutes per question, I guess. I'm just going to grab a couple for you. So the first one is, how often should you be auditing your international websites for localization? Is there some sort of cadence of how often to audit that?
I would say no. It depends on the industry you're in, how many products you're selling, how many times you're updating pages on your website. Because once you've optimized the journey for things like customer service, payments, and logistics, that's kind of set in stone. Your localization is more as and when you would do it. So it's a little bit like when we look at CRO testing, you need to have a decent amount of traffic on your site to, you know, to gather the data to say this works, this doesn't. But with localization, it's more of a the quantity of sort of new content that comes to your site that would determine how often you need to review it.
Great, perfect. And would you say it's better to target a language or a country when it comes to localization?
Harriet, do you want to do the honors?
Yeah, I'll take that to start with. So what I would say there in the first instance, to some extent, it depends on what type of business you are, you know, whether you are kind of retail or more B2B. So, and so it could be, say, if you're more on the B2B side, if you are a software provider or something like that, if you're able to then kind of localize your product, and then in terms of customer experience, your customers would have a similar experience whether they are in different countries using the same language, then you could potentially go more down the language route. But if you are on the retail side and where you've got the operational barriers coming into effect more so around kind of payments, logistics, all the kind of things that we talked about, there's going to be more of a need to tailor that experience and adapt it to really make sure that you're satisfying their expectations, and you're removing kind of all the friction that, you know, you would want to in terms of conversion. Arthur, would you want to add anything to that language?
Yeah, no, adding to that, that was spot on. I think adding to that, it's just a matter of always understanding that a language, same language doesn't mean same culture. Echoing what I mentioned before, say an ad or a website in terms of its message and what it offers might not be read the same in England versus in the United States versus in Scotland versus X, Y, and Z. So I think having the lens of the country is always really important, because the language itself doesn't say much when it comes to culture. And I think that needs to be top of mind. Same example with Spanish, Spain versus Spanish speaking Latin America, completely different cultures and how they approach everything. So hey, it really needs to have that, to take that into consideration.
Excellent. Great. Awesome. Well, again, thank you guys for joining. Thanks to our experts here. We'll be following up, as mentioned, with the recording of the webinar, but hope you guys have a great week. And yeah, we'll see you soon.
See you later. Have a good night.
Bye, everyone.